Today's guest is Lauryn Williams from Worth Winning. She is a 4-time Olympian and MBA who now has her own financial planning firm focused on serving millennials and professional athletes. She's crazy impressive. We can't wait to share her story with you today. We also talk about what it's like to be an Olympic athlete, how much it costs to be an Olympic athlete, and how much people are spending on sports for their kids in America. So it's a pretty awesome conversation, and we can't wait to chat.
Welcome to Fire Drill Podcast, where side hustles, savings, and creativity lead to financial independence. With your hosts, Gwen from Fiery Millennials and Jay from Millennial Boss.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Fire Drill Podcast. We have Lauryn Williams from Worth Winning here. Welcome, Lauryn.
It's so good to be on.
It's so good to have you. And we have Gwen here.
Hey everyone.
How's freedom, Gwen?
Freedom is good. Freedom is good. Kind of tiring though. I think it's all the early mornings and late nights that I pulled before I quit.
Yeah, you're a little burned out. Still kind of emerging.
Still recovering.
Well, good. Well, we're glad we have you on here to tell us all what it's like. All right. So, Lauryn, we are so pumped to have you. I think we're going to kick it off by having you give a quick bio of yourself to the audience.
Quick bio. I was born in 1980. Okay. I should probably go a little bit faster than that. I am born in Pittsburgh, raised between Pittsburgh and Detroit, because my parents split up when I was 3. I went to the University of Miami, and I stayed there for 12 years. No, I was not in school that whole time, but I was in Miami that whole time, competing in professional track and field. So in 2004, at age 20, I ran the second fastest time in the world, and it just happened to be the Olympic year. I was a junior in college, and I immediately had to turn my focus to becoming a professional athlete and an Olympian. And so I had a pretty awesome ride. I went to 4 Olympic Games, 3 as a track and field athlete, and then the 4th as a bobsledder. And that story happened by bumping into a girl in the airport. When I had to figure out what life after sport meant to me, I kind of looked at all the seeds that had been planted and thought about what I was passionate about. And I saw that athletes were not getting the service they needed financially. So I decided to start a financial planning company called Worth Winning. And it's geared towards serving young professionals and professional athletes.
Oh my God, Gwen, I don't know how you feel, but I'm just so impressed right now.
I know. It's like, what have I been doing with my life?
I know. Wow. Okay. So Lauryn, this is so cool. And I have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I have a special connection to the Olympic world. Not nearly as deep as yours, but in 2012, I was an intern at the United States Olympic Committee leading up to the London Games, and I lived at the training center in the Springs for 4 months, and then I stayed after to work for one of the national governing bodies. And it was there in Colorado Springs that I met my husband, who is a strength coach there too. So I don't know if you were ever working out at the OTC. I'm sure you were during that time, but maybe I saw you.
Actually was not. I trained in Miami exclusively until 2013. 2013. And then trained in Texas for a year before moving on. But I did visit the OTC, and I don't know if it was recent. I definitely visited recently. I didn't visit in the past. So maybe we didn't cross paths. So don't feel bad.
Well, it was good times.
If it makes you feel better, I have not been to the OCC at all.
You have to go, Gwen. They have a great tour, and they have awesome videos and everything. It's cool. And Colorado Springs is cool.
I know. I was going to say, they have a really cool tour.
Yeah, it's great. And actually, athletes are the ones that give you the tour for the most part. So it's kind of cool. But speaking of the athlete connection, so when I was there and lived there for almost 5 years and having my husband, who is a strength coach, a lot of our friends became athletes. And as someone who is very financially minded, and I have a financially minded podcast, there are a lot of, amazing inspirational things that I saw, and I was constantly impressed by what they're doing. But at the same time, there's so many hard financial things that you just don't see on the TV. Like when you're watching the Olympics, you have no idea what the years of work and effort in the financial landscape that went into that. So I think, Lauryn, can you tell us a little bit from your own journey? Like what is happening behind the scenes to get to the level that you need to be to compete at the Olympics?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't realize is that it varies across all sports, and it varies across levels of notoriety. So I'll start with across all sports. So the USOC goes out and finds sponsors. We're the only country in the world that is not government funded. that's competing in the game. So we don't get any money from the U.S. government to fund the team to go over to the Olympics or anything like that. So the USOC has to go out, raise the money, and then decide how to divvy that money up. And there's been lots of contention. We won't go there in the podcast, but about how that money is divvied up. And they spend more money on the sports that have the opportunity to earn them more income or higher watched and more views and things like that. So you could be in a sport that has less notoriety and almost not be funded at all. Or they fund, 3 people out of a team that needs to be 8 people. And so it varies quite a bit. Track and field is one of the big 3, if you will. So, in the pro sports world, we think of the big 3 as like basketball, football, and baseball. In the Olympic world, it's gymnastics, swimming, and track and field. And so having participated in track and field, I got to reap some of the benefits of the better resources that are available via the USOC and also other sponsorships. But it's still not a lot. In a good year, I think that it was probably around $10,000 of support in addition to health insurance. And I don't know very many people that are, living and doing their job full time for $10,000 a year. So you also had to find a way to supplement that. And that was as a tier 1 athlete, tier 1 being first round draft pick sort of thing. So that's the athletes that are expected to make an Olympic team and are top 3 probably in the country and possibly even top 3 in the world. There's a long set of criteria that I don't need to go into. But yeah, that top tier is only getting around $10K of support in addition to some health insurance and things like that. But you also get a fat bill at the end of the year for that health insurance that you received, even though you didn't have to pay any premiums. So what do we do then? We have to go out and find our own sponsors as athletes. And you have to be able to tell your story. You have to be marketable. You have to be in a more marketable sport so that it's a little bit easier. And in track and field, the way we do that is through shoe contracts. So Nike, Adidas, New Balance, Saucony, companies like that will kind of will athletes out of school if, they have really good talent, or, you'll finish school and then you'll go out, your agent will try to get you a deal with one of those companies. And then that's a whole nother level. So you could get a $20,000 contract, you could get a $200,000 contract, or you can get a $2 million contract. And that varies by event. So we've already talked about the idea that different sports get different kind of funding, but then within the sport, different events are more premier than others. So if you're a field event participant, you might have a really small contract and end up being a gold medalist and still not crack 6 figures that year. So you would think, Olympic gold medalist, of course, you're going to be compensated accordingly. And, there's lots of sponsors out there that want you. That's not necessarily true. Whereas in the sprints, which was the event that I did, you get a lot more notoriety and publicity, and to be the fastest woman or man in the world gives you a lot of leverage. And you could easily be a $200,000-$300,000 earner and then get bonuses and incentives and things like that. That if you win a gold medal, you could easily become a $1 million earner. So yeah, it varies quite widely from athletes that live in their car to pursue their Olympic dream to, the people like Michael Phelps who are multimillionaires and, don't have to work when they get done competing in sport.
Yeah. And I think I was seeing more at the people that were not at the Michael Phelps level, and the things that I saw that I had no idea before going into this. I don't know how it was like in track and field, but the specific sport that I was more familiar with, you needed to travel internationally almost like maybe multiple times per month every week in order for you to rack up enough points to get a world ranking to qualify to even be able to compete at the Olympics. So these are people that they're paying like thousands of dollars to fly to competitions all across the world. And then it's very difficult to get a job, especially, when you're older trying to compete. You're not a student. What place is going to hire you when you can't commit like full-time work? So luckily there are tons of companies that sponsor the Olympics, and you could work at like Dick's Sporting Goods. I think Hilton had one, and they were more flexible about your hours, but it wasn't like you were nearly making enough to offset the cost of all this travel that you were doing.
Yes, and that's exactly true. Like you said, the Michael Phelpses of the world are similar to, America and, even worldwide. That's the 1%, the people who are eating above and beyond and have far more than enough. The vast majority of the Olympians are, like you said, living in the Olympic Training Center for free and eating the food that's at the Olympic Training Center for free based on their performance. And then still having, like you said, the expenses that come with competing in the sport that they have to figure out how to take care of. And so they're working 2 or 3 jobs to earn enough for, like you said, just to cover one plane ticket. And it's got to be a job that is something that's going to be flexible, because you don't know your schedule as an athlete, or like you said, competition is the priority, or you're spending 2 or 3 months of the year in Europe. And you very frequently run into athletes who are charging all this to a credit card and hoping that if they just make it, they'll get enough money just to be able to break even. They're not even hoping that, an Olympic medal is going to make them rich. They've dealt with the reality that that is not the case, but they're hoping that it'll get them enough sponsorship, enough endorsement, or enough notoriety to just be able to pay off the card so that they can come home with the medal and be flat broke, as opposed to
massively in debt.
In the green. Right, exactly. As opposed to massively in debt.
Yeah, I think that's common. Like 5 or 6 credit cards just completely maxed. Family members contributing to their funding. I think that is very common.
Yeah, and it's also really hard to ask for money. I talked to an athlete earlier who was talking about having to write grants and fill out applications and things like that. And the guilt that comes with it, because you feel like you're begging to pursue this dream, and there's kids in places that are hungry, and there's, all these other sorts of different things. And it's like, you're putting your hand out for charity to be able to pursue this. But depending on perception, some people say like, hey, you're spoiled, and who are you to say you should train full time and I should give you money to fund this dream? Or, maybe someone's not saying that, but you just feel that. So a lot of athletes deal with that emotionally, like, how am I supposed to fund this? And so they prefer to take the 3 jobs than to ask for, assistance from a grant or organization or a friend or family or someone else to give their hard-earned money so that they can pursue their dream. So they spend a lot of time balancing that money emotion.
Yep. Yeah. And at the same time, I mean, there's nothing that brings kind of the world together more than the Olympics, and the struggle and the idea that like the underdog can win is something that's so important to that story. And I mean, I guess like if we applied financial principles, we should say that like people that can't afford it shouldn't try to do it. But at the same time, I mean, who wants to watch an Olympic Games with just a bunch of rich people? Like, it's about the story. It's about bringing the best athletic talent. From your coaching perspective, can we talk a little more about how you got into that?
Yeah. So the financial coaching came from, like I said, I was 20 years old. I was fortunate enough to become a 6-figure earner at 20 years old. So I was making over $200,000 a year. I came from a family of 5 sisters and 2 brothers. We did not have a bunch of financial literacy. We did not have a bunch of money. My father was ill with leukemia. My mother wasn't able to work at the time. So, we just had to kind of make ends meet. And here I am becoming this large earner. And I was a finance major, and I quickly learned that like being a finance major in college does not equip you with the skills to organize your personal finances. Like, there was no personal finance classes during the time that I was going to school. Luckily, now there is a major for that. Sorry, going off on a tangent. But yeah, I wanted to get the help that I needed. And I didn't want to be an athlete that went broke. And I wanted to make good decisions with this money. I wanted it to last. So I hired someone, and it was a financial advisor. And I didn't know at 20 years old that there were different types of financial advisors that, like you said, there's coach, there's financial advisor, there's wealth manager, there's planner. And it's like, what do all these muddled terms mean? And to sum it up for the listeners, you could call yourself any one of those things, and, you just go out tomorrow and start saying that. It's really hard to find a meeting. There are different licenses that are available and things like that. And most of the industry will carry something like a Series 7 license, which qualifies you to be able to sell products. And so those are people that taking a test and they're governed by someone, but what they are salespeople. And so I ended up in the hands of a salesperson, and I got sold, some investment products and some life insurance, and nothing in and of themselves is wrong with that. You do need to invest, and you do need to have insurance, be properly insured. But I needed help creating a budget. I was 20. I'd lived off of, my $1,000 a month and with my college roommate, and I had a jalopy car that my dad scraped together some money for. And I've gone from one extreme to the other overnight, and I just need the basic financial skills in place. Can I move out from living with my roommate? How much rent can I afford if I can move out from living with my roommate? Oh, I hear a lot of people are buying a house. Do I have enough money to buy a house? Well, how much house can I afford to buy? I totaled my car a couple months after going pro. Not on purpose, not because I just wanted a new car, but now I needed a new car. And so, what does that look like? And there's all these different financial topics that I had never navigated on my own. like I said, 20 years old. I now had the funds to be able to do it, but I knew there was a right way and a wrong way to go about it. And I was counting on the guy that I hired called financial advisor to help me with that. And those were not the things he helped with. He got paid a commission for billing for those investment products that he got. And the scope of our engagement didn't go beyond that. And I quickly realized that I wasn't getting the help that I needed, that I was still struggling every month to figure out like how to pay my bills. And it wasn't that I was overspending. It was just like an overwhelming task, light bill, house insurance. Then the end of the year comes up and it's taxes. And I never really had a clear plan. I was just paying stuff as I saw it, let the mail pile up while I was gone for 3 months, come home, have to figure that out. It was just a mess. And so I ended up going my separate way from him and kind of explaining to another gentleman what I felt like I wasn't getting. And this guy was working with a bunch of professional athletes. So I was like, oh, this is going to go better. He knows what athletes are up to, and he knows our crazy schedules, and he's going to get it. And he didn't get it at all. He was the same sort of person as the previous guy, charging for the investments. He actually tacked on another $10K for bill pay services. And so that's what yes, $10K, that happened. And what I thought I was getting was, like you said, once again, budgeting sort of thing. Like, you're going to understand what's going on with my cash flow and help me kind of navigate that. And this is when auto pay was kind of like a newer thing, but it did exist. And all my bills were already on auto pay because, like I said, I was traveling so much. So it's like, now I'm paying you $10,000 for you to pay my bills on time that are already on auto pay. Like, wait, what? So yeah, that didn't go well, is a long story short there.
I am getting so angry. Why? Why are people so awful?
I have no idea, but it's rampant in the financial industry, but then also, like you said, with athletes being taken advantage of. People love to take advantage of, what you don't know. And so that's why, like I said, look, to skip to the good part of the story, the reason I started my business and started doing, what I call financial coaching, but it is full out comprehensive financial planning, is because I felt like I didn't get the services I needed as an athlete. I didn't get the services I needed as a young professional, and that so much of this industry is investment focused. But what about my whole financial picture? So, like you said, what about my budget? What about my student loans? What about the education that I need around this? What about, I don't understand my 401k. I just got this job. Like, how do I even navigate all these employee benefits and HSA and FSA? And, all of those are money topics. I want to save for my wedding. I want to buy my first house. That's what we're all dealing with as young professionals. And there should be someone you can go to and ask questions about that stuff. Your job has stock options. Well, what do I do when they vest? When is a good time to exercise those things? There's a lot that we're navigating. And I feel like there just should be someone. And I decided to be that someone because, like I said, most of the jobs in the financial industry are very investment based, very assets under management based, very, once you get your first $1 million in the bank, then you can become a client. And it's like, well, what do I need you for now? I got $1 million in the bank by myself. So I never really got it, even after working at the big firms. What was the point in that? You need help now.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of realized for starting my blog as well. I was looking around at all the blogs, and at the time there were big FI bloggers like Mr. Money Mustache and Jacob from Early Retirement Extreme and JD Roth. And all these guys were great, but they were older than me and they weren't in the same life stage as me. They weren't a young professional struggling to figure out all the things that you listed or, house and stuff like that. And there especially weren't very many young women blogging. So I became the blog that I needed. I started my blog so other people could have the benefit of seeing somebody go through life that they were going to go through in a couple of years.
And I'm sure, like, Lauren, from your perspective, you understand the mental game too. Because I know how mentally tough you probably need to be to do things like this and like to achieve and to perform at that highest level all the time in these like really high pressure situations. Not only are you putting hours into your sport, you're putting hours in the gym, you're trying to manage your work and all of that. So it was probably like you could provide some of that mindset stuff too.
Yeah, exactly. I feel who better to help an athlete than a former athlete? Who better to help a young professional than someone who is a current young professional? And, it's like you said, dealing with the exact same thing. But it does. A lot of the sports aspects carry over into managing your finances in a way that's going to give you freedom. And it's goal setting for one. Setting short-term goals, setting long-term goals. We talk, and I use a lot of sports terms in my financial planning process. Like my plan is called a game plan. And We talk about like this idea of like, once you meet these small goals, they're races, and you go to practice, you do well at practice, you go to race and you end up doing well at the race, and you do well at a bunch of races and you end up winning the championship. There's a lot of different life skills and different characteristics that sports give you that carry over into being organized as it pertains to your finances that I try to share with people in creating the mindset that's going to help them go after what they want and become financially free.
So what are some of the first steps when you have a client come in? Like, who is your typical client, and what are some of the first steps that you have them do?
I'll do the non-athlete profile first, I guess. My typical client is in their 20s or 30s. Generally, they're in their 30s because they feel a little bit more grounded, and, their income is starting to stabilize, and they're starting to say like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Like I've had a few years working and I feel comfortable in this job, but I don't know what I'm planning for or how my future is going to work out, or I don't feel like I'm making any headway on my student loans. And like I said, I want to buy a house, or I bought this house and I just feel like I'm broke every month. I pay the mortgage and then there's nothing left over. So there's cash flow issues. And in the 20s, it's like I have a recent college grad package. So like I said, one of the things I was really passionate about was being able to provide service to everyone. So you're fresh out of school, you're not ready for a full all-out financial plan, but you still want to get help. So I meet with you 3 times and we kind of walk through, like you said, employee benefits. Which of these 6 payment plans is the right one for you as it pertains to student loans? And here's how you set up a budget. It's kind of on you to follow through, but I've at least pointed you in the right direction. I've given you some tips on things that you should avoid, people that will approach you that don't have your best interest and ways to navigate through that, some checklists, stuff like that. So yeah, young professionals that are just looking for money answers are the avatar, if you will, of the typical client. From an athlete standpoint, it's someone who's interested in being educated. And that matters for, like you said, both clients, either side. But one of the things that I find out frequently with athletes, or I feel people kind of do, is you don't worry. You just go run. We'll take care of everything. You just go shut up and dribble is the saying that, is pretty popular right now that someone said and didn't go well for them. But that's frequently how people think of athletes is you stick to sports and don't worry about anything else. And I think that's the worst thing you can do is say, don't worry about anything else. I think we need to stop enabling athletes and creating that mindset that everything else will be taken care of for me. All I need to do is this, and we need to educate. So I'm very, very education focused. An athlete that's not going to be a good fit for me is one who can't give up that mindset that you're my person, you handle this for me. That's not a good fit for me. The one that actually wants to know what's going on and understand, you're right, it's my job to take care of it. You can rest assured you can step on your field of play and things are being taken care of for you behind the scenes. But that if someone asks you a question, that you understand why you have a SEP IRA, or that your budget is in order, what your light bill is. Instead of saying, I have no idea, I've never paid one before, I don't even know the name of the light bill company, that's beneath me. Because guess what? You have this agent and you have this entourage of people that are with you, and they seem to be the most important people to you right here, right now in the moment. But what happens when sport is over? Your agent disappears because guess what? The agent still has to feed themselves. So they're on to the next athlete. The coach disappears because the coach needs to coach more athletes to earn a living. But your career is over and now you've got to move on. Who's left behind in that situation? If you have a financial advisor, they're still with you because you're going to have to manage your money for the rest of your life. And so I'm trying to create a relationship with you that's going to stick and help you understand, okay, well, all these other people have disappeared and these are the gaps that are left in between. But now you have the skills you need to be able to carry on, and you have a plan in place to be able to carry on. And we set some money aside for you to figure out what you want to do next. Money is a tool to help you live the life you want. That's what I frequently tell people. And having that tool in place and having a plan in place to use that tool is the most important aspect of an athlete being able to transition clearly, because you're going to have an identity crisis when you're done competing in sport. And so why have I don't have any money in addition to I don't know who I am, in addition to I left school early and I don't have any education, all piled on top of you? My job is to look at it and say, hey, this off season would be great for you to go back to school. Did you know there was this program that's offering free education that you can do online while you're competing? And encourage you to get yourself together now for later, to really spend time on that. So I guess that's kind of the difference in the way that I serve athletes and the young professionals.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I was just thinking, Would you think something different now in 2018? We're in the age of like online branding and entrepreneurship. Would you encourage an athlete to start getting into that young so that they're like solidifying their brand when they exit?
For sure. One of the other things I talk about is the idea of giving and giving strategically. So as it pertains to like, aligning yourself brand wise, I tell athletes to pick something that they're passionate about. So if it's the Boys and Girls Club, to start giving to the Boys and Girls Club. You can give in 3 ways: your time, your talent, and your treasure. And if you're an athlete that doesn't earn a lot, that's no big deal. Go give your time. Go give your talent. What other things are you good at that you can give to this organization to start to build the relationships? And organizations love having athletes around. So whether you're an Olympic hopeful or an Olympian, they're happy to have you. They're happy to have your influence. They're happy to have you talk to their kids or their CEOs or their senior citizens, whatever the case may be. But to start building a relationship, because one thing that happens to us as Olympians is you're stretched all over the place. So-and-so's calling and there's this event here and there's this event there, and there's no shortage of things to do. And frequently they don't pay. And so you're trying to put yourself out there and, like you said, build this brand, but really what you're doing is running yourself ragged. So to really have a strategy in place to say, this is what I want to align myself with. This is the thing where I'm going to dedicate most of my time, and I'm going to do X number of other things to be out there, to be in the community, to be building my notoriety, but not running myself ragged. Like that is a strategy in and of itself that athletes need to think about and be able to conquer. And then also, like you said, to give your treasure. So time, talent, and to be putting a little bit aside, even if you give them $50 a year, whatever it's in your budget to be able to do. Because when life after sport comes, this organization that you spent a lot of time with, you giving your money to, can turn around and say, she's been great all while she was competing. Now you're done. We'd love to invest in you. We'd love you to be on our board of directors. We'd love to give you a job here. We'd love to introduce you to so-and-so. And like you said, if you've been going there regularly, so-and-so and the board and these things. So when you give, you get the opportunity to have someone give back to you. And that investment that you make in yourself and in that organization, it pays both ways. So that's one aspect. You were asking me more so about brand, but I felt like that plays into brand, is building the brand. And he said, like, telling your story out there and telling it the way you want it to be told, because there could be some point where you get to a performance and you do something amazing and people all of a sudden want to tell your story and they don't know where to look. They don't know where to find any information. Well, if you've already started telling your story, they have to go off of what you've posted. And that's where they're more likely to go. They're not going to go to someone else's page. They're going to go directly to your social media. If there's not much there, you don't exist on social media, then they go and they find the story elsewhere. And you don't want your story to be told by someone who can't tell it the way that you can tell it, or to start being crafted as the bad boy or the sexy girl or the whatever the case may be. You get the chance to tell your story. You get to tell your story every day in the way that you want. And people are going to be watching your story. And all it takes is one person to see your story, to connect with it, to want to invest in you, to want to help you in the future, and for that investment to go a lot further and give you a bigger return than you could ever imagine, just because you are authentic in telling your story.
I love that. And so speaking of, if people want to invest, I know personally, I'm so impressed by the hard work and dedication that I've seen athletes do and that I know that they're doing. And I like my job in a cubicle, but like what they're doing is just a higher level in my mind, at least. So if you're a regular person who wants to support athletes, or maybe, you may have like jobs that you want to make available to athletes and you're willing to be flexible, what can the average person do to help in these situations?
Yes, I think that is a wonderful question. So I'm actually working on a project now because I haven't seen, I guess there's issue with liability, because I brought it up to the USOC quite a few times to create sort of like a host network where people could go in and kind of sign up and maybe do just like a background check, but you can host. So like in bobsled, for example, you said with all that travel and us not making really any money, we depend heavily on people to sponsor us or to help us out. And they built a little network in Calgary, Canada, of people that you could say, oh, call Jill, and Jill knows 5 other people that will allow, Olympians or Olympic hopefuls to stay in their home. So one, it could be as simple as, like you said, providing a meal or an overnight stay for an Olympian that's in your town or Olympic hopeful that's in your town. But 2, offering those jobs up. Reach out to the USOC. Or social media is a way to reach everyone nowadays. So definitely you can tweet at Lauryn Williams and say, hey, this is a job posting I have for Olympians. And I'm going to spread the word like wildfire. But just spreading the word that you are, in fact, looking for an Olympian. You are willing to provide like you said, the open hours, that you're letting them work online, doing a virtual sort of position, because we're looking for work experience in addition to work for dollars and cents right now in our pocket. You want to be prepared for life after sport. So if someone is willing to invest in us and help us earn the skills and do that on a more flexible basis that would coincide with our schedule, we'd love to have those people. So like I said, I'm building the platform. Hopefully it'll be done sooner rather than later. I'm not going to throw a date out there, but I really feel like that platform should already exist, and there should be a network for people to say, hey, I want to help. How can I help? And then an athlete be able to click here to connect with somebody if they're visiting Dallas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think people do want to help too. It's just they don't know how. And who wouldn't want to hire an Olympic athlete? Like, these are people, the dedication, my husband being a strength coach, I see them put in hours in the gym, and then I know they put hours in at practice. I can't even work out for 45 minutes without being like exhausted. Their work ethic is unreal. Then they do classes in school. Like, they would be great hires, I think, if people were more open-minded and they connected themselves to opportunities.
I completely agree.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we're going to go into our rapid fire round. We're going to ask you a few questions in succession. So the first one is, I know you have a podcast worth listening. What is your favorite episode of the podcast so far?
Oh my, I think I just recorded my favorite episode yesterday with Annie. I can never say her last name properly. She's a skier though. What I really loved about it was she was so authentic. And so, even the topics we're talking about right now, being an athlete that sacrifices everything and writing those grants and really funding your dream. She was just so authentic in talking about it. And when sport was over for her, she had to go get a job and not understanding, like you said, her 401k, and just kind of telling her boss, like, hey, I don't know this. I've never done this before. Someone's going to have to help me. And I think it's so important for people to hear on the other end, my listeners, something that they can relate to and say, oh, I don't know either. Because there's this taboo around money that we shouldn't be talking about it. And it's so private and it's something you got to keep to yourself. But there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't know. And if you just speak up, someone's willing to help you. So that was definitely one of my favorite episodes. A funny one I just did recently was with an NFL player. His name is DJ Williams. And he talks a lot, at least it's said very candidly as well, about the mistakes he made and dumb stuff that he did with his money. And I think frequently people, kind of put all athletes in that boat, but he's running a very successful business now. And he talks about how those mistakes, he turned them around. It taught him how to ask questions. And he's very inquisitive now. He's making very good decisions. And he used those failures to take himself to the next level. So I'd say those two are two of my favorites.
Cool. Awesome. Gwen, do you want to ask the final two?
I would love to ask the final two. Okay. How can people get in touch with you if they have more questions or want a coaching session after listening to this episode?
So my website is worth-winning.com. And you can find the podcast worth-listening.com. But either one will take you to both. They kind of, lead you to the same place. And then if you're looking for me, the Lauryn Williams, the Olympian, it's lauren-williams.com. So everything has a dash in it. Social media, you can find me typing in Lauryn Williams. I'm Lauren with a Y, Lauryn. And all the social media is Worth Winning, one word.
Perfect. Okay. So then the final question. If you could have anything in the world, do anything in the world, have any skill in the world, what is your wildest dream?
I have had a pretty awesome life, but I have not conquered everything. So if I could conquer anything, I would say it would be the ability to help others feel open. That's kind of like where the podcast came from. It's not something really where I pump my business or I want to become the biggest podcaster with the most advertisements and money and all this kind of stuff. It's a passion project because I see how much people suffer when they're afraid to talk. And I know it's been a big journey of mine to be able to be open and honest about my failures and to get comfortable in that space. So if I had the ability to help people open up and really be able to just talk about whatever it is that they're going through, suffering with, so that they can get the help they need, I think I'd be awesome at life.
I love it because this is like a skill you can actually develop and work on, and you can achieve that. I mean, like, mine, I wish I had the power of invisibility, which is just not going to happen. So I love that yours is like awesome and attainable.
Yes.
It would be pretty cool to be invisible, though, to like just be sitting in a room listening to folks and.
Right?
I know. I would love that too. Cool. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so interesting and amazing for Gwen and I. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we're definitely going to start listening to Worth Listening now. And I hope that everyone listening has a new podcast they can add to their lineup too.
Yes, please do listen and give me some tips on, like you said, how I can improve my interviewing skills so that others feel more comfortable being more authentic. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're not going to get them from us because Gwen and I, we totally like go off on tangents and things, but I think our listeners have accepted that by now. But
yeah, if they don't accept it, they stop listening. So
yeah, exactly. But
sorry about that, everybody.
Yes.
But not really.
We love you. Yeah. So Lauren, thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Go to our website, firedrillpodcast.com, to continue the discussion and get the link to our private Facebook group.
If you like us, leave us a review on iTunes. If you're like me, you have no idea how to do that. So, in the podcast app or in iTunes, search for Fire Drill Podcast, find it, click the Reviews tab, and write something to make my mother proud of me. We read every single review and want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making this podcast possible.